In my eyes, the next great LSU quarterback has arrived. After producing guys like Joe Burrow and most recently Jayden Daniels, the Tigers have really elevated the quarterback position in the last half decade or so. I remember when I first started watching college football, you had guys like Zach Mettenberger and Brandon Harris who were fine, but they weren't exactly superstars who could take their team to the next level. LSU was always known as a team that ran the ball and had a great defense, but now they are really starting to get good quarterback play, and it looks like Garrett Nussmeier is next up. After having a huge career in the state of Texas and growing up the son of a coach, Garrett Nussmeier has been a big deal for quite some time and has gotten a chance to stay in the LSU system for 3 years now. While some coaches and coordinators have changed, Garrett Nussmeier has been preparing for 3 straight years now and has showed enough in his small sample size to believe that he's the next great Tigers quarterback. In today's video, I'm going to introduce you to who he is. We're going to go through the rise of Garrett Nussmeier, talk about how he's done at LSU so far, and why he is next up in Baton Rouge. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you want to support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's get started and talk about Garrett Nussmeier. In order to understand how Nussmeier got to this point, we first need to go back in time. His father Doug played quarterback for the New Orleans Saints in the late 90s, and Garrett was born in Lake Charles, Louisiana. His dad eventually went into coaching, which led to an interesting life for Garrett. Being a coach's kid, he had moved 9 times, including the country of Canada, and he lived in so many different states and cities of different sizes, so adapting to life was something he had gotten used to. Because of his dad, he was always going to be a film junkie, as he remembers sitting in his dad's laptop watching film on Saturday nights and on Sunday mornings, and he's been doing that since he is 6 years old. He would throw the ball with his dad in the backyard a ton, and by the time he was 10, he was already developing a 3-step drop method and working to be a future college football quarterback one day. As he eventually got to high school, coaches figured out who Nussmeier was. In fact, they thought he was pretty dang good. He was a leader by the time he was a sophomore, and he also had arm talent, but he was doing all the little things right, like widening out receivers and managing games with a football IQ that few ever actually develop. On a Friday before a game Nussmeier's sophomore year, he asked his coach if he could watch film at 5 p.m. before a 7 p.m. game. That part wasn't too uncommon, but then Atkinson entered the room to find Nussmeier with the entire receiving corps. He saw a sophomore explaining to juniors and seniors, quote, "Alright, here's what I'm thinking pre-snap, here's what I'm going to do with the ball, and you better be ready." This floored Coach Atkinson, and he said, quote, "Garrett brings a lot to the table at the quarterback position. First, he's a great kid. Second, he's like having another assistant coach. Next to our offensive coordinator Coach Morrison and myself, I would say Garrett is the one with the most knowledge of what we do offensively." Because of this, his recruiting started to go crazy. He said, quote, "My phone is always buzzing. Typically I'll FaceTime at least 2 coaches a day, and I'll stay in contact with a lot of coaches every day, and it's been a fun and interesting time." But it wasn't always like that. Nussmeier was not familiar with LSU's coaching style the first time he threw for his future offensive coordinator Steve Esminger. He arrived in Baton Rouge for a 2018 Elite 11 camp, and at the time had no college offers. He hadn't even been a full-time varsity player yet, and he was an unknown commodity who just moved to Texas. He ended up throwing that day for both the OC and Coach Orgeron, but did not receive a particularly positive response. The coach got on him, and by the time they left, he looked at his dad and said, quote, "I don't think they liked me very much." He said the Tigers then eventually offered 2 days later, and he said, quote, "LSU was my first offer, and it was an amazing feeling to know that somebody as high profile as LSU offered you your first offer. It was pretty special." With the kind of season Garrett Nussmeier had in 2019, it was no wonder that college football's defending national champions came calling. He said, quote, "I understood that the offer was a, hey, we think you're going to be this, not you're an SEC caliber quarterback right now, and I took that as motivation." Basically, he was saying that it was a soft offer and not a full offer. He was saying that they liked his potential, but didn't like him who he was. He started setting alarms on his phone every morning and said, quote, "Prove them right." This provided him with something of a timeline to get to that level though. As a junior, he threw for 3,788 yards and 38 touchdowns and led his team to a district championship and 2 playoff victories. He improved his team from 5-5 to 11-2, and they even got to the regional quarterfinals in 2019. Nussmeier said him and his teammates enjoyed every single minute of it, and he had 30 offers to choose from, but after sorting through Arizona State and South Carolina, it was clear he was going to end up at LSU. It was easy for him to make LSU his program of choice, as his high school coach said, quote, "I think LSU is a good fit for a lot of reasons, but the 2 most prevalent are that 1, it is his dream to play for LSU, this is the school that he and his family have been cheering on for years, and how many times in your life do you get the opportunity to play for the team that you've always followed? And 2, Garrett is a big-time player who deserves to be among big-time players who play big games at the highest possible levels for their age group." A Lake Charles native, Nussmeier traveled all around the country, but he said the Bayou State was the place that draws him in the most. It's also part of the reason why he chose the Tigers, and he said, quote, "I think the most important thing about LSU for me was that it was home. Growing up, Louisiana has always been my consistent home, so my love for the state is very strong. My roots are in that state, and I will always think of it as my home." He ended up becoming the first quarterback to choose LSU since Joe Burrow became a Heisman winner, a national champion, and a number 1 overall draft pick. He's perhaps proof of the perception of change that happened at the LSU quarterback spot. Garrett ended up having a solid senior year, and eventually left high school football with a broken hand after leaving everything on the field. LSU was getting a really solid pickup, as according to 24/7 Sports, Garrett was a 4-star recruit, the number 14 quarterback, and the 84th best player in the class of 2021. So, how did he end up doing in Baton Rouge? Well, let's take a look. When he arrived at LSU, he was put into a very interesting spot. At the time, he would battle it out with both redshirt freshmen Max Johnson and TJ Finley, plus the starter from early 2020, Miles Brennan. Unfortunately, after he got hurt and then got in another fishing accident, he was out of commission, so there was a ton of strain on the LSU quarterback room. Many believe that Max Johnson would end up winning the job, and that is exactly what would happen, but for LSU fans, there was a 5-alarm fire beneath Max Johnson on the depth chart. Eventually, TJ Finley also transferred to Auburn, so Garrett Nussmeier might have a chance to play right away. While many thought he would just play some snaps in cupcake games, many also believed that he was a potential option for the future of LSU's offense, and not an underwhelming one by any means. In 2021, Nussmeier would end up appearing in 4 total games. He had a couple snaps against McNeese State and Central Michigan before he played a decent amount against Ole Miss, throwing for his first touchdown, and then playing a ton against Arkansas as he went 18 of 31 for 179 yards with a touchdown and 2 picks. They ended up losing to number 25 Arkansas in overtime, and Nussmeier finished his true freshman year with 329 yards and 2 touchdowns with 2 interceptions. Going into 2022, Max Johnson had left for Texas A&M. They had brought in 5-star recruit Walker Howard, and they also brought in Arizona State transfer Jayden Daniels. This was going to be a really weird quarterback room, and Nussmeier was likely going to get left out once again. He would end up appearing in 5 regular season games, throwing a touchdown against New Mexico and completing 13 passes against Southern. Eventually, though, he'd actually have to be forced to play in the SEC Championship game in 2022, and he actually played really well. He went 15 of 27 for 294 yards and 2 touchdowns with an interception. While LSU lost 50-30, this was a great moment for Garrett Nussmeier to showcase his future, to showcase his potential, and against one of the best defenses ever, he did really well. A following couple of weeks later in the Cheez-It Bowl against Purdue, Nussmeier once again got a chance. He completed 11 of 15 passes for 173 yards and 2 touchdowns as they beat Purdue 63-7. In total, Nussmeier threw for 800 yards with 5 touchdowns and 4 picks. Going into 2023, Walker Howard would leave for Ole Miss, Jayden Daniels would use his extra year of eligibility, and they would sign blue-chip recruit Ricky Collins after he would flip from Purdue to the Tigers. This left him in an interesting spot. Jayden Daniels was once again going to be the guy. It's like they were already out-recruiting him in the future. But he was loyal to LSU, and he wanted to stay there. He could have gone to another big-time program and earned the starting job, but it was the only place he wanted to be, and he remained loyal to Brian Kelly and LSU, despite losing the quarterback battle. In total, in the regular season, Nussmeier would appear in 5 total games. He'd go 4 of 6 against Grambling with his first career rushing touchdown, and then he threw a touchdown against Army in late October. He also got a chance to play against Alabama a little bit. He was once again just a backup quarterback. Things would eventually change though. They'd end up getting to a bowl game against Wisconsin, and Garrett Nussmeier would make his first start since December 4th of 2020. On his senior night, he threw for 200 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick, and now Garrett Nussmeier would once again make a start in the college level. This was due to Jayden Daniels opting out because of the 2024 NFL Draft, and in his first career start against Wisconsin, Nussmeier would impress. He completed 31 of 45 passes for 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, and a 69% completion percentage. Garrett Nussmeier ended up beating the Badgers 35-31, and this was a huge moment for him. He proved that he was the next guy up, and bowl games are typically a good indicator of who's next, and Garrett Nussmeier showed that he's going to be the guy. In total last year, he finished with 591 yards, with 4 touchdowns and 1 pick, with obviously 1 more score on the ground. Now, he's expected to be the next big thing. They'll both have Ricky Collins as a backup, and they brought in AJ Swann from Vanderbilt, and while I do actually really like Swann, in my eyes there's not a chance that he actually steps on the field, and that's just an insurance policy if Nussmeier goes down. He's had 3 years in the system, has waited his turn, and now it is time to unleash him. Unlike a majority of college football quarterbacks who transfer after 1 year, Nussmeier stayed true to himself. He said, quote, "I knew this was the place I wanted to be. I wanted to be in LSU's football operations building, and I knew I wanted to represent the university." While some may think of Garrett Nussmeier as just an overrated and overhyped preseason dude, I think he's going to have a really good season. People have been raving about his football IQ, he's impressed when he's actually got on the field, and he's had plenty of experience, and he now knows he's ready to go out there. Coach O also actually compared him to the legendary Joe Burrow. Coach O said, quote, "I don't want to put that on him yet because Joe is very special, but I do see some similarities that Garrett has as far as leadership, as competition, ability to make plays, and so on. I think he's going to be a great quarterback here, and I'm very pleased with him." That's what Coach O said, not me, and I'm excited for the Garrett Nussmeier era at LSU. There's high expectations with what Jayden Daniels just did, but Nussmeier should be fine. I expect the receiver room to be solid, the defense to be good, and for LSU to be competing for a college football playoff spot. If Nussmeier has a good year, he could be a one and done and go off to the NFL, and if not, I think he has one more year of eligibility remaining after this. We'll just have to wait and see, but after waiting a long time, he deserves his opportunity, and in a world of transfers, NIL, and different craziness, Garrett Nussmeier is a guy we should all be rooting for, and I'm excited to see what happens. But what do you guys think? If you're an LSU fan, what do you think of Garrett Nussmeier? How do you think he'll do this year? And what quarterback should I preview next? Be sure to let me know down below. Leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out all my other videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.